Senze uloyiko because sifuna ukuveza ihlobo abantu bephatha ngalo kulamazwe ngapha. So now sifuna ukuveza into abantu abaninzi muzanga bayibona ukuthi yini enzike kukhula kundi. So leza so samuveza.
Production by young activists from Sipesai Care Youth Organization, which is based in Cape Town. Now, the word uloyiko is an Xhosa word that means fear, and the play seeks to create awareness around the Gukurahundi genocide, which took place in the southwestern parts of Zimbabwe against the Matebele people between 1983 and 1987. And that's what we are talking about this morning, and we'd like for you to also contribute and take part in our conversation. We have Mr. Yanga Mhluzi, who's the PR officer and scriptwriter for Uloyiko. Good morning to you and welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me too.
Mr. Manana, maybe let me start with you as the researcher, and if you could give us some background. I'd like to know what led to this genocide, because as I see it started long before Robert Mugabe was in power in 1980. I mean, it goes back to the 60s and the rift, the political rift within ZAPU, Joshua Nkomo's ZAPU party. And until then, ZAPU was the main liberation movement. I mean, we know that this then split up. It led to a split and the setting up of ZANU under the leadership of Ndabanenge Stole. Give us the background to this.
ZAPU was the first party, and ZANU broke away from ZAPU. As a matter of fact, Robert Mugabe was the secretary of ZAPU by then. So Ndabanenge Stole and the likes of Innocent Kala had different ideologies, and they broke away from ZAPU and they formed what is called today ZANU. What happened is within ZANU itself, there was also some tribalism. We find also the likes of Ndabanenge Stole being kicked out from ZANU, and because they were simply not Shona. We also find Innocent Kala, who also started this movement, being kicked out later on, and he died a bitter man actually. So the situation of Gukurahundi, it's based on tribalism, and it's based on tribal dominancy. So if we can see history, I think if General Peter Walls can come to life and testify, he will tell you that the people that gave the British tough time in fighting for the liberation of Zimbabwe is ZIPRA and ZAPU. So in history today, we are less told about what ZIPRA or Joshua Nkomo contributed to the liberation of Zimbabwe in 1980. So we come to 1980, we find this, what is called the 1979 Shona Grand Plan. It was meant to make Zimbabwe a Shona dominance state. That's why we also find Robert Mugabe, Terence Shiri, Emerson Mnangagwa having problems with Joshua Nkomo in the early 80s of Zimbabwean independence. As a matter of fact, Robert Mugabe said to Joshua Nkomo he must campaign in his country during the campaign time in Zimbabwe. So he was meaning that Joshua Nkomo must campaign only in Matabeleland and Midlands. He must not jump to Mashonaland. So it goes on to see the birth of this genocide that started in 1983 to 1987. Innocent civilians were killed, and it was sometimes, to a certain extent, they want people to believe that it was a political issue, but we are missing the point. It was strictly a tribal thing, and it was based on tribal hatred by Mr. Robert Mugabe and Terence Phiri, Emerson Mnangagwa, and the rest of the crew. Today, the victims will tell you that some were killed for mere not knowing how to speak in Shona, and some were killed for mere not knowing how to respond to the soldiers in Shona. You know, also the people who executed this genocide were a Shona dominated, or were a Shona brigade that was trained in North Korea specifically for this genocide. This genocide was also systematic. It also targeted people from 14 years to 40 years. So it actually wanted to eradicate the Matabele's. It wanted to eradicate this nation, which played an important role in the liberation of South Africa. As we know that ZIPRA and Umkhonto we were working hand in hand to liberate country, South Africa and Zimbabwe during apartheid era and the white dominancy minority rule in Zimbabwe. So as Uloyiko would like to say, an oppressor is an oppressor, no matter black or white. Recently, we are having we saw on YouTube two people in Victoria Falls in the valley who couldn't understand how to talk in Shona. They were put flour and they were victimized. In 2013, Nkosilo Musa Dube was arrested for mere not knowing how to speak in Shona. Majority of the government officials, you go to Beitbridge border, Plumtree border, there are no natives that are working in border posts. Employees are given to the Shona elite. So Zimbabwe is a tribal tinderbox, and as Uloyiko would like to expose the Kukurahundi genocide happened in 1983 to 1987 and also continues in other forms. People are being victimized and vilified, and the Matabele's are living in fear. Most of them fled back to South Africa.
All right. And, we're trying to get an understanding of where this comes from and what relations currently are, like in Zimbabwe. My guests, Mr. Ayanda Manala from an Uloyiko researcher and human rights activist. But just to bring you in, Mr. Yanga Mhluzi, so we're talking issues of not only tribalism, but when Robert Mugabe assumed office as the first prime minister of Zimbabwe in 1980, he had the task of uniting a country that had been subjected to many, many years of increasingly repressive racist rule. So it was racism on the one hand and tribalism on the other hand. Talk about how both this contributed to the genocide, to the Gukurahundi genocide, just 3 years after Mr. Mugabe became president.
As a young man in South Africa, a 22-year-old, I have known Mugabe as a leader and as a person who fought the liberation struggle. So I knew him as a hero until I did research. I have discovered that Mugabe is a tribalist that hijacked the struggle and acted that he was the main or the key person who fought, although the people who are catalytic in the process like Joshua Nkomo, Ndabenge, and many more. As I've noticed that, now people are being victimized. So there's always two stories in one story. So people have focused on one side, seeing Mugabe as a hero. But we have discovered that Mugabe was never a leader. He came into politics with intentions or to rule by fear. As Manara have said, that people are being tortured, women are being raped, aborted. If you can see Mugabe, he is well known as a hero. But we have discovered that Mugabe is a murderer, a terrorist, and a rapist. Because on his right mind, he commands soldiers to go and strike terror in civilians. Not all any civilians, but Ngoni civilians, in specific Ndebele. But you never see any peace or disturbance in the side of Mashona in Mashonaland. It's only pro-Zanu and Zipra people who are being victimized and massacred. Even genocide, we as the Logico, we still believe that it is still in function, as they have a system in hand of terrorizing people from Matabele land. As you can see even now in education. In education, they are being taught in SONA. How can you take a 2-year-old or 5-year-old and put that child in SONA? You know very well that child won't understand. It is a system to make sure that they don't go to tertiary education. So it is a system that still is functional even today. This system has spread even to South Africa. If you can see, I'm a teacher student, I'm studying in CPUT. I'm saying it's only SONA from Zimbabwe who are getting full bursaries. I can say 95% of SONA are getting bursaries, but not even one baby that gets bursary. So it is a system that has spread even to South Africa. If you can see even in South Africa in employment, they make sure that SONAs are getting employment in South Africa from public sector to private sector. You can go each and every student, you see it's only SONAs. So Mugabe has a system in hand. There is a grand plan that is strictly going to attack Southern Africa, and it has proceeded in South Africa. If you can go to Lumbombo even now, you can see almost half of the natural resource is run by SONAs. And the employment is only for SONAs.
Okay, and we'll talk more about the kind of research that you conducted into this that leads you to what you are saying. But I would also like to hear from our listeners, especially if you are from Zimbabwe. Call us on 0891 104 207 and tell us what your experiences are, either as a Shona person or as a Ndebele person. 0891 104 207 is our telephone number. You can also send your SMSs to 34701. We'll be taking calls. Let me try Mbuso in Sandton.
Hello?
Good morning, Mbuso.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Yes. I'm just calling on the matter of this Coco Round thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this thing is live and it happened. And now it's still happening.
What are you saying? You're saying it's lies?
No, it's live.
It's live. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, like as the first speaker said, our brothers and our fathers, they are the one who fought for that country against the white Donian. So what is happening is that since that time, we never even one day enjoy the so-called freedom in Zimbabwe. As you know, from that time, Joshua Nkomo was a leader. He was chased away from the government, from the cabinet of Mugabe. And Dumiso Tabenga, who was a leader of the army, he was arrested in Lookout Masoop for being the leaders of the Zebra forces. So there were a lot of things that happened in Matabele side. The people were killed. Even I remember where I was grown up, there were people who were buried alive in the same hole. So they were told to dig that hole, and then after that they were told to get inside the hole. Then they were buried alive. So it was surprising that those things during that time we were not having enough media. As the media was coming from Britain, I don't know whether Britain was in the support of that, I don't know, but they didn't even publish all those stories. What happened is that that thing continues until now. As we speak now, they put a lot of Shona teachers in our schools teaching our young children. And it's hard for them to understand from someone who doesn't speak their language. And what is happening is that even the offices, the registration offices, all the civil servants are Shonas. They even put the roadblocks, even you were working here when we were going home. Last time we went for the, just last month we went for the celebration of the commemoration of our king in Zeligas in Mhlasandlela. We were with the guys who were from KwaZulu, because we always go together there to celebrate, especially Amantunga from KwaZulu. They can even witness what I'm saying. We were counting the roadblocks. Those roadblocks were about 17 from Beckbridge to Bulawayo. All those roadblocks Shona police. And no one of them which said we must go without being searched and we leave money on each and every roadblock. So guys, I say thanks to Loiko to expose this thing because it has a long time. This thing keep on happening. No one even cares about it.
And
I'm so surprised even people like the leading government like the ANC. The ANC knows that they were working with the Zebra forces, even ZAPU. But today they are acting as if they are working. They were working with the ZANU of Mugabe, of which is not true. Even Tabema, when Loiko came to Johannesburg Theatre, he was talking about them that even Jacob Zuma, you know that they were even together on the trenches, but today they've forgotten about it.
All right.
And we people from Machiavelli, you know that we are people who went with the kings leaders from here in South Africa, which including people like Zulus, Sothosi, and also Amaxhosa. A lot of Nguni people who went there, in even the Sothos, which were collected along the way by the kings, because even the Tswanas. When the king arrived there, he created the nation which he called Umphakathi, of which there are a lot of people or even races which are under that nation, like Tongas, Gendas, Shanganis, and the other, which I can't count all of them.
All right.
And if you see that Kokuraunde, they were sent to kill all those people who are coming from that part of the country.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Wow, Mbuso in Sandton, talking about the antagonisms that still exist even today between the Shona and the Ndebele people in Zimbabwe, and also talking about this genocide, the Gukurahundi genocide. Let's take a quick call from David in Alberton. Good morning. Welcome, David.
Yes, morning.
Please go ahead, David.
Yes. All of these guys are talking about research. I want to tell you, like, what I witnessed, not about research.
Yes.
I am Shona. I married a Ndebele woman, a beautiful Ndebele woman. I grew up in Kwekwe, that's in the middle of Zimbabwe. I remember when I was in grade 7, we were no longer going to sport like soccer and everything after school, because the whole thing was hectic. I believe that the Gukurahundi was too hard-headed, yes, but it was necessary. Because there is people who were called dissidents at that time. I know people were abducted by the called dissidents, killed and everything, and they had ZAPU, they had their own small army that was operating under the name of dissidents. Yes, the government was too heavy-handed, but they had to kill that because it was going to be a civil war. Yes, unfortunately, a lot of Ndebeles lost their lives, but unfortunately, ZAPU, as it was more on the Ndebele side.
But before, I need to understand what you mean by your question or your point that Gukurahundi was important, that it had to happen. Yes. David, you are Shona, and you say you married a Ndebele woman, but you say Gukurahundi was necessary. Why was it necessary? Hello, David?
If you have to guess, there's a guy called Gatsela, there's a guy called Samulenyoka. Those guys were dissidents, and they had arms as well, and they were these are just a few people I'm talking about. There were plenty of them. So if you look in the Midlands and Matabeleland, they used to have night vigils. They also used to kill other people as well, like innocent people. So the army had to come in to fight with these guys.
So who was the conflict between? Was it between government agencies or government and civilians, or was it these dissidents and civilians?
It was the government against the dissidents. But as you know, every time when two elephants fight, it's the guys that suffered more.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's exactly what was happening there. So when they're doing their play, they're only looking at Gukurahundi as in the act that happened, but not looking at what really caused it to happen.
All right.
In 1980, when Joshua Nkomo was the Minister of Defense, he chose to resign because he wanted absolute power as well. So that's exactly what happened. And when he resigned, his clique also went with him,
And if you ask your researchers, ask them about a camp, a soldier camp called Conmara. You know what really triggered that? It was on Fridays. They used to go out for drinking, and this particular Friday, all the Shona soldiers got drunk, and then the Ndebelers were not drunk because they had already planned to kill the Shonas, and there was big fighting in that Conmara camp, and a whole lot of Shona soldiers lost their lives. That's exactly what triggered now the army to go in their huge numbers to Blawayo, which happened to be where the Zapu was actually operating from.
All right.
So I would say it was necessary. Yes, they used too much force, but it was necessary.
Okay, thank you very much, David, for that. Well, there's lots that has been said. Mr. Manala.
Yes.
Gukurahundi was necessary, David says, and he wants you to tell us about Conmara camp and what happened there, where Shona soldiers also lost their lives to Ndebele soldiers.
Look, I don't even think that David is married to Ndebele for this. I also, how can a genocide be necessary? If there were dividends, do you mean to tell me that a pregnant woman that they opened a womb was a dividend? Do you mean to tell me that innocent civilians that died, more than 20,000 that were recorded by the CCJP report, were dividends? It's just propaganda, and it's just propaganda and propaganda. That is what ZANU-PF do. They spread propaganda and give an excuse to kill innocent civilians. David, together with his Robert Mugabe, because he supports the system, how can you say a genocide is a necessary thing? How can you kill civilians? Today, also innocent civilians are being victimized. Is that necessary?
Okay, make us understand exactly who was responsible for what, because I think the waters are getting a little bit murky here.
As I said, there is a 1979 Shona Grand Plan that was meant to actually make Zimbabwe be a Shona-dominated state. That 1979 Shona Grand Plan is still continuing today. It was a planned thing. The fifth Brigade actually went into training in 1981 in North Korea before 1983. So it was planned. These dividends that he talks about were created, and it was an excuse to kill innocent civilians.
Okay, and that's what I'm trying to get clarity on. That, so the conflict is between government, and what David said, it's between government agencies or government and the dissidents. And like he said, when two elephants fight, it's the grass that gets affected. So it's the civilians that got affected. Explain to us the role of each, the role of government and the role of the dissidents in the Gukurahundi genocide, Mr. Mhluzi.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, as Manala have said, dissidents were created by Mugabe and his government. Even if you can do research, you never see research or in any documentary see a dissident being arrested or killed. That simple means there were no dissidents, they were never executed. It is just a simple system that was designed to strike terror to Nguni people, Ndebele in specific. So that dissidents, they never existed. It was just a government that was used to make Shona superior, of which it did because they killed a number of civilians. If you can see, as Manala have said, pregnant women are being tortured. They cut their belly out, crush the uterus. They were killing children, small children, because they said, okay, Mugabe said on public speech, I will cut dissidents in that dissident father. Meaning he will also young children, infants. That was the system that they were using. Women were being raped. It's only Shona. You can see maybe Zapu. Zapu was a national party. It had leaders from Mashonaland, but not a single person or single terror was struck in Mashonaland. It only went to Matabeleland because this was a tribal war. It was Shona against Ndebele. But Ndebele were defenseless and Shona were trained and they were armed. So they were striking terror on people that are defenseless. As you can see, mostly children, even today,
also talk about the role of South Africa at the time in this genocide, in this massacre, in the Gukurahundi genocide, but also how you've applied all this to, or translated or interpreted it to the actual play.
Yes, you see, Gukurahundi worked very well for the apartheid system. As I said before, Zipra and Umkhonto we were fighting hand in hand. Chris Ali narrates it very well, and he talks about the Wangi-Beck bricks. So these were one and the same people, and the Gukurahundi genocide hindered the Zipra and the Umkhonto to operate, to even come to South Africa through Matabeleland. That is next to South Africa. So apartheid system, actually, it is speculated that apartheid system had an agreement with Robert Mugabe, and it worked well. It worked well for the apartheid system, and it said that our brothers who fought, who were fighting to liberate South Africa, are still haven't tasted that freedom up to today. But South Africans have freedom at hand. So the system played an important role in this genocide.
I read something that in Zimbabwe in the 80s, and this is exactly what you're saying, that a certain sector in the nation had been identified as the other. You know, when you're going against the other, so it was necessary to get rid of the other, to purge the other. That became necessary for the purification of the rest of the nation. I'd like you to reference that to the meaning of the word Gukurahundi, which is the rain washes away the chaff from the last harvest before the spring rain. So just reference that, make it make sense for us.
Actually, the rain that washes away the first chaff, actually it was Robert Mugabe and his Shonas. As I said before, it points back to the 1979 Grand Plan. Gukurahundi genocide is just a segment of that Grand Plan. So you see that it was well planned, and it was given a relevant name that soon after independence, they will wash away that chaff, and then they will rule freely. And they've instilled fear in the Matabeleland. Even up to today, other Matabeleland haven't gone back to Matabeleland because they are afraid. You know, they flash back and they're so traumatized. They are marginalized even up to today. So it gave them, the Gukurahundi washed away the only threat of the people that resisted. You know, Matabeleland are known of resisting, even from the whites. They resisted in 1883. They are commemorating the Battle of Katate, where their state fell on the 5th of November. There's nothing like wars between the Shonas and the white superiors when they come, the British when they came to Zimbabwe. There's nothing like that, because in Zimbabwe there are two lands, different lands: colonial land where people died for their land, and there is chartered land in Mashona land. They simply agreed. Actually, Shonas didn't exist in 1880s. We don't find anything of Shona tribe. So it was also speculated that it was also created by the whites along the way. In 1980s, Robert Mugabe was the kith and kin of the West that he hates today. So it points out that this thing was a planned thing, and the Matabeleland are only suffering from resisting the white minority rule and from resisting the tribal dominance of the Shona. They are still surviving, they are still resisting, and they still want to restore Umtaga's state because they've been given second-class citizenship. They don't see themselves in future having included in Zimbabwe. So this is what is happening. It was planned, and the name Gukurahundi on its own says it all.
All right. Just in closing, I mean, how do you tell the story in the form of a theatrical production? Where did you begin, Mr. Mhluzi, and where do you end to encapsulate the richness of the story?
Okay, the story summarizes Gukurahundi from the stretch up to the end. We started from the war against Britain, and then we carry out the genocide and the activities that are still happening today. As you can see, the Bebele's don't have a problem. The only problem that the Blairs are having is that Shaunas has a problem. So we are kind of narrating the Gurauni genocide into theater because we understand that we are having different audience. Some audiences, they don't like to read, but they like to see some things visually. So I then decided to write a theatrical play in which people can see the events visually. So the play actually carries out the story of Gurauni genocide. It shows that what roles that Britain and other European government played in making Gurauni exercise and how Mugabe became a leader and how has they successfully implemented their grand plan and genocide. So it is a narration of the whole system from genocide to the grand plan.
And where do we see the play, and give us the details of the play, of that? I mean, where do we see it, when and how much, all those details?
Okay. We are staging next month in CPUT. We are staging next month CPUT Belvoir campus. The tickets that will be available, the COVID ticket, they cost 100 rand for students, they 50 rand. We are staging in Belvoir campus, remember? On the 12th of November and on the 20th of November, we're staging twice in Cape Town.
And if people would like to find out more details, is there a website?
Yeah, you can get us on www.oloyiko.co.za. You can also get us on Oloyiko. Our page is Oloyiko Theatre. We are also having a Facebook group, Oloyiko Theatre Group. So it's Oloyiko Theatre Production. So we are in Facebook and we are also on the internet. You can get us anywhere.
All
right. You can also get our clips on YouTube and everywhere.
Thank you very much to both my guests, Mr. Ayanda Manala, Oloyiko researcher and human rights activist with ActionAid International, and Mr. Yanga Mhluzi, the PR officer and scriptwriter for Oloyiko. And if you'd like to see Oloyiko, you can get the details on www.uloyiko.co.za.